banned from my grandson's birth after paying for everything. Only immediate family can be at the hospital. The words hit me like a slap across the face as I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot at 3 a.m., watching other grandparents walk through the doors to meet their new grandbabies while I was told to stay outside. My hands gripped the steering wheel as I listened to my son Miguel's voice through the phone, explaining why I couldn't be there for the birth of my first grandchild. But they had no idea what I was about to discover they'd been planning behind my back. Let me take you back to how this all started. It was March 12th, 2024, and I had been awake since 2 a.m. when Sophia went into labor. After 9 months of paying for doctor visits, buying nursery furniture, and covering every expense related to this pregnancy, I thought I'd earned the right to be there when my grandson took his first breath. My name is Eleanor Martinez, and I'm 69 years old. I live here in my comfortable house in San Antonio, Texas, where the morning light filters through my kitchen windows and I can hear the roosters from my neighbor's yard welcoming each new day. It's the same house where I raised Miguel after his father died when he was just 10 years old, working double shifts at the hospital to make sure he had everything he needed. Tell me in the comments what you're doing right now while you listen to my story. Are you having your morning coffee, getting ready for work, or maybe thinking about your own grandchildren? Hit that like button, because each like is so important to help my voice reach other grandmothers who've been treated like ATMs by their own families. And subscribe to Grandma's legacy, because sometimes the people we sacrifice the most for are the ones who value us the least. Now I sit here in my sunny living room, looking at the empty space where I'd planned to put a rocking chair for those precious grandmother-grandchild moments I'd dreamed about my whole life. It's peaceful now, but 9 months ago, I was living in a whirlwind of excitement and expectation that was about to turn into the most expensive lesson of my life. You see, when Miguel called me in June 2023 to tell me Sophia was pregnant, I thought it was the answer to every prayer I'd whispered since becoming a widow 15 years earlier. Finally, I would have a grandchild to spoil, to love, to create memories with. I was going to be the grandmother who showed up, who helped out, who made this baby feel surrounded by family love from day one. Sophia was 28 then, working as a social media coordinator for a local beauty salon, and she had very specific ideas about how this pregnancy should go. The prenatal vitamins had to be organic and cost $40 a bottle. The doctor had to be the most expensive one in San Antonio because only the best for our baby. The nursery needed hand-carved furniture from a boutique store because mass-produced items weren't special enough for her Instagram posts about the pregnancy journey. Every request came with a sweet smile and a reminder that this was my only chance to be a grandmother, that Miguel and Sophia weren't planning to have more children after this one. Every expense was positioned as an investment in my relationship with my future grandchild, a way to show how much I cared about this baby's future. $25,000. That's what I spent over 9 months, drawn from my retirement savings that my late husband Roberto had worked 35 years to build. $25,000 to prepare for a grandchild I wasn't allowed to meet. Looking back now, I can see that the hospital parking lot wasn't where my story ended. It was where I finally woke up and realized I'd been played by experts. To understand how I became the woman sitting outside a hospital at 3 a.m., banned from my own grandson's birth, you need to know who Eleanor Martinez was before I learned that love and money are two completely different things. I was born Eleanor Reyes in 1954, the youngest of 4 children in a family that understood the value of hard work and the importance of familia above everything else. My parents had immigrated from Guadalajara in the 1940s, and they raised us with the belief that family takes care of family, no matter what the cost. My mother would say, "Mija, when you have children, you give them everything you have and more. That's what love looks like." I took those words to heart in ways that would shape every decision I made for the rest of my life. I met Roberto Martinez in 1975 when I was 21 and working as a nurse's aide at Methodist Hospital. He was 24, a soft-spoken electrician with gentle hands and the kind of steady presence that made you feel safe just being near him. We married in 1978 in a beautiful ceremony at San Fernando Cathedral, surrounded by both our extended families and the promise of building something lasting together. Miguel arrived in 1985 after 7 years of trying and one devastating miscarriage that left me wondering if motherhood would ever be part of my story. When I finally held him in my arms, with his thick black hair and his father's serious expression, I felt like my life had finally begun. Roberto would come home from electrical jobs covered in dust and wire fragments, but he'd always clean up and spend hours on the floor with Miguel, building towers with blocks and reading the same storybooks over and over until our son fell asleep against his chest. Those early years were everything I'd dreamed family life could be. Roberto's electrical business was growing steadily. I was working part-time at the hospital while Miguel was small, and we'd bought our house in the South Side neighborhood where you could still hear Spanish spoken on every corner and the smell of fresh tortillas drifted from kitchen windows every morning. We weren't wealthy, but we were building something solid for our son's future. But life has a way of changing everything in a single moment. Roberto had a heart attack on October 3, 1995, while working on a commercial electrical project downtown. He was only 47 years old, and the doctors said it was probably related to undiagnosed high blood pressure and the stress of running his own business. Miguel was 10 years old enough to understand that Daddy wasn't coming home, but young enough to still believe that somehow, if we all wished hard enough, this nightmare would end and life would go back to normal. The life insurance money was enough to pay off the house and cover Miguel's expenses through high school. But suddenly, I was a single mother trying to figure out how to be both provider and nurturer for a grieving child who had lost his hero. I picked up full-time hours at the hospital, working night shifts so I could be home when Miguel got out of school, sleeping a few hours in the afternoon while he did homework at the kitchen table. Those teenage years were when I first learned to measure my love in dollars spent. When Miguel wanted to play football, I bought the equipment, even though it meant eating rice and beans for a month. When he struggled with math, I hired a tutor I couldn't afford because I couldn't help him myself. When he wanted to go to college, I took out loans and worked overtime to make sure he could study business at UT San Antonio without worrying about money. I thought I was being a good mother. Looking back, I can see I was teaching him that Eleanor Martinez would always be there to solve whatever problems money could fix, that my love was best expressed through my willingness to sacrifice my own security for his comfort. After college, Miguel struggled to find his footing. He went through several jobs, a few failed relationships, and a period in his late 20s where he seemed to be drifting without direction. I helped with rent when he was between jobs, covered his car payments when his credit was damaged, and quietly paid for the business classes he took when he decided he wanted to start his own marketing company. Then Sophia appeared in 2021, and suddenly Miguel had focus and energy I hadn't seen since he was a child. Sophia was beautiful, ambitious, and had very clear ideas about the kind of life she wanted to build. She worked in social media, understood branding and image, and seemed to bring out a confidence in Miguel that I hadn't seen in years. I was so grateful that my son had found love and purpose that I didn't pay attention to the subtle ways Sophia began managing our family dynamics. She'd suggest that maybe Miguel needed more independence from his mother, that maybe I was holding him back by helping him too much, that maybe it was time for him to stand on his own 2 feet. But when Sophia got pregnant 2 years later, suddenly, my involvement wasn't holding Miguel back. It was essential for their future success. The pregnancy announcement came in June 2023, delivered with the kind of social media fanfare that defined everything Sophia did. She posted perfectly staged photos of tiny baby shoes and ultrasound images with captions about blessed new beginnings and growing our family. When Miguel called to tell me personally, his voice was filled with excitement and something else I couldn't quite identify. Relief, maybe, or anticipation that had nothing to do with becoming a father. "Mom, I hope you're ready to be the best grandmother in Texas," he said, and I felt my heart expand with joy I hadn't experienced since Roberto was alive. But almost immediately, the requests began. Sophia's first appointment with the obstetrician revealed that their insurance had limited coverage for prenatal care. "The doctor we really want is out of network," Sophia explained during a family dinner at my house. "But he's supposed to be the absolute best in San Antonio. All the other moms in my social media group use him." The additional cost would be $300 per visit, and with monthly appointments for 9 months, plus additional ultrasounds and tests, we were looking at over $4,000 in medical expenses their insurance wouldn't cover. "I can help with that," I said, already mentally calculating which part of my retirement savings I'd need to tap. "This is my first grandchild. I want the best care possible." Sophia's smile was radiant. "Oh, Eleanor, you're going to be such an amazing grandmother. This baby is so lucky to have you." The nursery came next. Sophia had created an elaborate Pinterest board with hand-carved furniture, organic cotton everything, and a color scheme that required custom paint mixing to achieve the exact shade of sage green she'd envisioned. The crib alone cost $1,200 before you added the matching dresser, changing table, and rocking chair that would create the perfect environment for bonding and development. "I know it seems expensive," Miguel said, when he showed me the total estimate of $8,000 for the nursery setup. But Sophia's read all these studies about how the baby's environment in the first year affects their cognitive development. "We want to give our child every advantage possible." I wrote the check, telling myself that this was what grandmothers do. We invest in our grandchildren's futures. We help create the foundation for their success. The baby shower was Sophia's next production. She'd researched venues, compared caterers, and created a theme that would look beautiful in the photos she planned to use for her growing Instagram following about pregnancy and motherhood. The venue at the historic Pearl District would cost $2,500, not including decorations, catering, or the professional photographer she insisted was essential for capturing authentic moments. "Mom, I know this is a lot to ask," Miguel said during one of our weekly dinners, "but Sophia really wants this day to be special. She's been planning it since she was little, you know? And with the baby coming, this might be our last chance to celebrate before everything changes." I paid for the baby shower, telling myself that this was about creating memories, about celebrating the new life that would soon make me a grandmother. But sitting at that elegant party, watching Sophia pose for professional photos while opening gifts I'd purchased from her registry, I started to feel less like a beloved family matriarch and more like a convenient funding source. The pattern continued through the pregnancy. Maternity clothes from expensive boutiques, because Sophia's changing body deserved to feel beautiful. A professional maternity photo shoot, because these were once-in-a-lifetime memories that needed to be captured perfectly. Prenatal massage therapy, because pregnancy stress wasn't good for the baby. Organic grocery bills that doubled their usual food costs because everything that went into Sophia's body needed to be pure and natural. Each request came with detailed explanations about why it was essential for the baby's health and development, why this wasn't the time to cut corners or settle for less than the best. Each expense was framed as an investment in my relationship with my future grandchild, proof that I was committed to being a hands-on, supportive grandmother. But as the months progressed, I began to notice that my involvement was carefully managed. I could pay for doctor appointments, but Sophia preferred to go alone because she needed to bond with her care team. I could buy nursery furniture, but my opinions about placement or decoration weren't needed because Sophia had a vision for the space. I could fund the baby shower, but the guest list was handled by Sophia and her friends because they understood the aesthetic she was going for. I was financing every aspect of this pregnancy, but I was increasingly excluded from actually experiencing it. The most painful moment came during Sophia's 8th month, when I asked if I could accompany her to one of the ultrasound appointments. I wanted to see my grandchild on the screen, to hear the heartbeat, to share in that magical moment of anticipation. Sophia's response was swift and final. "I appreciate the offer, Eleanor, but these appointments are really intimate for Miguel and me. We need this time to bond as a family unit." A family unit. I was funding their family unit, but apparently wasn't part of it. The birth plan revealed the final layer of my exclusion. Sophia had decided that only immediate family would be allowed at the hospital during labor and delivery. When I asked Miguel what that meant for me, his answer broke something in my chest that I'm still working to repair. Well, Sophia's parents and her sister will be there, obviously. And maybe Sophia's best friend Sarah, because she's been such a support during the pregnancy. But Sophia thinks too many people might be overwhelming. Sophia's best friend was more immediate family than the grandmother who had paid for every aspect of this pregnancy. I was too overwhelming to witness the birth of the child I had financially supported from conception. That's when I realized I wasn't being treated like family. I was being treated like a sponsor whose usefulness had an expiration date. The call came at 2:14 a.m. on March 12, 2024. I remember the exact time because I was staring at my bedside clock, trying to will myself back to sleep after a restless night of thinking about the baby who was due any day. Miguel's voice was breathless with excitement and something else, urgency, maybe, or barely contained panic. "Mom, Sophia's in labor. We're heading to the hospital now. I'll call you when we know more." I was out of bed and getting dressed before he hung up. This was it, the moment I'd been preparing for, financially and emotionally, for 9 months. I threw on clothes, grabbed the overnight bag I'd packed weeks earlier with snacks and comfortable shoes for what I assumed would be a long day at the hospital, and drove through the empty San Antonio streets with my heart racing with anticipation. The parking garage at Methodist Hospital was nearly empty at that hour, and I made my way to the maternity ward with the confidence of someone who belonged there. I'd been to this hospital countless times as a nurse's aide, and I knew exactly where to go. This was my grandchild being born, my family expanding, my moment to step into the role I'd dreamed about since Miguel was small. But when I approached the nurse's station to ask about Sofia Martinez's room number, the nurse gave me a confused look. "I'm sorry, but I don't see you on the visitor list. Are you immediate family?" "I'm the baby's grandmother," I said, certain this would clear up any confusion. "Let me call the room and check with the family," she said kindly, but something in her tone made my stomach start to churn. 10 minutes later, Miguel appeared in the waiting area, still wearing his scrubs from the delivery room. His face was flushed with excitement, but his eyes couldn't quite meet mine. "Mom, I'm so glad you're here, but there's been a misunderstanding. Sophia's really stressed about having too many people around during labor. The doctor said she needs to stay calm and focused, and having a lot of visitors might be overwhelming." "Miguel, I'm not a visitor. I'm this baby's grandmother." I know. But Sophia's parents flew in from Houston yesterday, and her sister drove down from Dallas, and her best friend Sarah is here for support. The delivery room can only accommodate so many people, and Sophia needs her support system right now." Sophia's support system. After 9 months and $25,000, I wasn't part of Sophia's support system. "How long do you think it will take?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I can wait here until after the baby's born." Miguel shifted uncomfortably. "The thing is, Mom, Sophia's really private about this whole process. She doesn't want anyone who wasn't part of the birth to see her right afterwards. You know how she is about pictures and privacy and all that? Maybe it would be better if you went home and I called you when we're ready for visitors." Ready for visitors. I wasn't family waiting for a new baby. I was a visitor who needed permission to meet my own grandchild. That's when I understood that I'd been systematically excluded from every meaningful moment of this pregnancy while being expected to fund every aspect of it. The doctor appointments I couldn't attend, the ultrasounds I couldn't see, the baby shower where I was seated at the back like a distant relative, and now the birth where I wasn't immediate family enough to be present. I sat in that hospital parking lot for 6 hours, watching other grandparents walk through the doors with balloons and flowers and joy, while I received periodic text updates from Miguel. "Everything's going well. Baby's almost here. It's a boy. Isabella is actually a boy. We're calling him Diego." The name change shouldn't have surprised me. I'd been told for months that they were having a girl named Isabella, that I should buy pink clothes and feminine nursery decorations. Now, apparently, they'd known all along they were having a boy, but nobody had bothered to inform the person paying for everything. At 8:30 a.m., Miguel finally called with the official news. Diego Roberto Martinez, 7 pounds, 4 ounces, healthy and perfect. Sophia's doing great. We're going to rest for a few hours, and then maybe this evening you can come meet him. This evening. My first grandchild had been born, and I was being scheduled for a meet and greet, like I was a distant acquaintance rather than the woman who had made his existence financially possible. I drove home in a daze, trying to process the complete exclusion I'd just experienced. But when I walked into my quiet house and saw all the baby preparation I'd done, the gifts wrapped and ready, the rocking chair I'd bought for grandmother-grandson bonding time, the photo albums I'd prepared to share stories about his daddy's childhood, I felt something shift inside my chest. If you're feeling the hurt and exclusion of this moment with me right now, show your support, hit that like button, comment if you've ever been treated like an ATM by family members, and subscribe because we grandmothers need to stick together when we're being used and dismissed. That afternoon, while Miguel and Sophia were bonding with their son surrounded by Sophia's family, I made a decision that surprised even me. I called a real estate agent I'd been thinking about contacting for months, ever since I'd started wondering if my little house was too small for the multi-generational family life I'd been imagining. I'd like to look at some larger homes, I told her. Something with room for a growing family, maybe a nursery, a playroom for grandchildren. I'm thinking of making a big purchase, something that would be a gift for my son and his wife. The agent was thrilled to help, and we scheduled appointments to view houses the following week. But as I hung up the phone, I wasn't thinking about giving Miguel and Sophia a gift anymore. I was thinking about what it would feel like to have my own space, my own rules, and my own definition of who counted as immediate family. The house hunting wasn't going to be for them, though they didn't know that yet. It was going to be the foundation for the biggest lesson in consequences that Miguel and Sofia Martinez had ever received. The days following Diego's birth established a pattern that made everything crystal clear. I was needed for money, not for memories. Miguel would call when they needed diapers, formula, or medical expenses covered, but visits with my grandson were carefully controlled and limited. Sophia decided when I could see him, for how long, and under what circumstances. Diego's on a very strict schedule, Sophia would explain when I asked to babysit. His pediatrician says consistency is crucial for development, and he's not ready for overnight stays with anyone yet. But Diego was apparently ready for overnight stays with Sophia's parents, who had extended their visit from Houston and were helping with night feedings and diaper changes while I was kept at arm's length. The financial requests continued without pause. Premium diapers because regular ones might cause rashes. Organic formula because breast milk wasn't sufficient. A new car seat because the one we'd bought was recalled. Pediatric appointments with specialists because Sophia wanted the most comprehensive care possible. Every request came with detailed explanations about Diego's needs and development, but every request came through Miguel, never with an invitation to be involved in the actual decision-making process. Meanwhile, I threw myself into house hunting with an energy that surprised my real estate agent. Within 2 weeks, I'd looked at 15 properties and had very specific requirements: 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a large kitchen perfect for family gatherings, and a yard where children could play safely. The agent assumed I was planning to have Miguel and Sophia move in with me, especially when I mentioned wanting a nursery and playroom. "You're going to make such wonderful grandparents," she said as we toured a beautiful colonial-style home in the Monte Vista neighborhood. "Multi-generational living is becoming so popular again. Your son and daughter-in-law are lucky to have your support." I let her believe what she wanted to believe while I calculated square footage and imagined myself in each space. But I wasn't imagining Miguel and Sophia living there with me. I was imagining myself living there without them. The house I finally chose was perfect. 3,200 square feet on a quiet street with mature oak trees and a wraparound porch that reminded me of the homes in my childhood neighborhood. 4 bedrooms, 3.5 bathrooms, a gourmet kitchen with an island perfect for meal preparation, and a backyard with space for gardening and entertaining. The price was $425,000, a significant chunk of my retirement savings, but I'd been careful with money my entire life, and Roberto's life insurance combined with my own savings made the purchase possible. I put in an offer that was accepted within 24 hours. That's when Miguel and Sofia's behavior toward me changed dramatically. The shift happened when my neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, mentioned to Sofia's mother during a chance encounter at HEB that she'd seen me looking at houses with a real estate agent. Sofia's mother immediately called Sofia, who immediately called Miguel, who called me within an hour with a level of enthusiasm I hadn't heard since Diego's birth. "Mom, I heard you're looking at houses. That's so exciting. Are you thinking about downsizing or maybe getting something bigger for when Diego gets older?" I kept my voice neutral. "I'm exploring my options." "Well, we'd love to be involved in the process. Sofia has such great taste, and she could help you think about what would work best for a multi-generational situation. Maybe we could look at some places together this weekend." A multi-generational situation. For 3 weeks, they'd barely let me spend an hour alone with my grandson. But now that they'd heard about house hunting, suddenly they wanted to be involved in my real estate decisions. The dinner invitation came the next day. Sofia called personally, the first time she'd called me directly since Diego's birth, with an invitation for Sunday dinner at their apartment. "Eleanor, I feel like we've all been so busy with the new baby adjustments that we haven't had quality family time. Miguel and I would love to cook for you and just catch up on everything that's been happening." I accepted the invitation, curious to see exactly how this new dynamic would play out. Sunday dinner was a performance worthy of an Academy Award. Sofia was warm and attentive, asking about my health, my work at the hospital, and my exciting house hunting adventure. Miguel was more affectionate than he'd been in months, hugging me when I arrived and making sure my wine glass stayed full throughout the meal. Most tellingly, I was suddenly allowed unlimited access to Diego. Sofia brought him to me without prompting, encouraged me to hold him during dinner, and even suggested that maybe it was time to start thinking about overnight visits. "He's getting so much more social," she said, settling Diego in my arms while we ate dessert. "I think he's ready for more bonding time with his grandmother." Bonding time that had been deemed inappropriate just days earlier was now not only appropriate, but encouraged. Over coffee, the conversation naturally turned to my house hunting. "So, Mom, tell us about the places you've been looking at," Miguel said. "Sofia and I are so curious about what you're thinking." "Have you found anything you love?" Sofia added. "We're so excited to help you make this decision. It's such a big step, and families should support each other through major life changes." Families should support each other. The irony was so thick I could have cut it with a knife. I smiled and told them I'd found the perfect place, that I'd be making some big announcements soon, and that I was planning a little gathering to share my news with everyone who mattered to me. They practically glowed with anticipation, clearly imagining themselves as the beneficiaries of whatever real estate generosity I was planning. They had no idea they were about to get exactly what they'd given me: complete exclusion from the family they'd claimed I wasn't immediate enough to join. The closing on my new house happened on a beautiful April morning, exactly 6 weeks after Diego's birth. I signed the papers with a sense of liberation I hadn't felt since Roberto died, knowing that for the first time in months, I was making a decision based entirely on what I wanted rather than what someone else needed from me. The house was everything I'd dreamed of, spacious enough for the life I wanted to build, beautiful enough to make me proud, and most importantly, mine completely. No one else's name on the deed, no one else's opinions about decoration or furniture placement, no one else's rules about who was immediate family enough to be welcome. I spent the week after closing quietly moving my belongings and setting up my new space exactly the way I wanted it. The master bedroom faced east to catch the morning sun. The kitchen island was perfect for the cooking I loved to do. The living room had space for the piano I'd always wanted to buy, but never had room for in my smaller house. But the room that gave me the most satisfaction was the one I'd originally planned as a nursery for Diego. Instead of converting it to a baby's room, I turned it into my home office and craft space, with built-in shelving for my books, a comfortable reading chair by the window, and a desk where I could manage my finances and plan my retirement activities. Meanwhile, Miguel and Sophia's excitement about my big announcement had reached fever pitch. They'd been calling more frequently, visiting more often, and suddenly treating me like the beloved family matriarch they'd never seemed to consider me before. Sophia had even started bringing Diego to see me twice a week, complete with diaper bags and bottles, encouraging me to practice taking care of him for longer periods. "You're going to be such an important part of his life," she told me during one visit, watching me feed Diego his afternoon bottle. "Grandmothers are so crucial for children's development. I want him to have that special bond with you." The special bond she'd actively prevented me from forming for the first 6 weeks of his life was now not only acceptable, but essential. The calls about my house hunting intensified. Miguel would casually ask if I'd made any offers, if I needed help with paperwork, if there was anything they could do to support my big transition. Sophia started sending me Pinterest boards with decorating ideas for multi-generational living and articles about the benefits of grandparents living close to their grandchildren. They had constructed an entire narrative in which my house purchase was ultimately about providing them with better housing and closer family connections. Every conversation revealed more of their assumptions: that I was buying a house big enough for all of us, that I was solving their space problems and Diego's childcare needs, that I was essentially purchasing them a better lifestyle while maintaining the illusion that I was making an independent decision. The revelation party planning began in early May. I told Miguel and Sophia that I wanted to host a celebration at my new house, that it was time to share my exciting news with family and friends. They offered immediately to help with planning, decorating, and catering, the first time since Diego's birth that they'd volunteered their assistance for anything that didn't directly benefit them. "Mom, this is such an exciting time for our family," Miguel said, while helping me plan the guest list. "Diego's going to love growing up in a big house with his grandmother right there. Sophia and I have been talking about how perfect this timing is." Perfect timing. They'd calculated that my house purchase was perfectly timed to solve their financial and housing constraints while requiring no effort or sacrifice on their part. The invitations went out to extended family, neighbors from both my old and new neighborhoods, and a few close friends from work. 25 people who had watched me sacrifice for Miguel's family, and who would witness the culmination of that sacrifice in whatever announcement I was planning to make. Miguel and Sophia threw themselves into party preparations with enthusiasm I'd never seen them direct toward anything involving me. Sophia created a Pinterest-worthy decoration scheme. Miguel handled the catering arrangements. They both insisted on contributing financially to the celebration, though their contributions were modest compared to the thousands I'd spent on their pregnancy and Diego's early months. 2 days before the party, Sophia asked the question that revealed just how completely they'd misunderstood the situation. "Eleanor, should Miguel and I start packing up the apartment? I mean, I don't want to assume anything, but if we're going to be moving into the new house soon, we should probably start getting organized, right?" Moving into the new house. They had assumed that my real estate purchase was essentially a larger apartment for them, funded by me but occupied by all of us, with their names nowhere on any legal documents, but their lives completely subsidized by my generosity. I smiled and told them not to worry about packing just yet, that all the details would be revealed at the party, that they should just focus on celebrating this exciting new chapter for our family. They had no idea that the new chapter I was celebrating was the one where I finally learned to put my own needs first, even when the people I loved most made that choice heartbreaking but necessary. The revelation party took place on a perfect Saturday afternoon in May, with the spring Texas sun filtering through the oak trees in my new backyard and a gentle breeze carrying the scent of the jasmine I'd planted along the fence line. The house looked beautiful. Sophia had outdone herself with decorations that perfectly showcased the spacious rooms and elegant details that made this place so special. 25 people mingled through the living room, kitchen, and covered patio, admiring the hardwood floors, the updated kitchen with its granite countertops, and the master suite with its walk-in closet and spa-like bathroom. Miguel and Sofia moved through the crowd like proud hosts, accepting congratulations on their grandmother's generous decision to provide them with such a beautiful family home. "Eleanor is such an amazing woman," I heard Sofia tell my neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez. "She's giving us this incredible gift so that Diego can grow up with his grandmother right here. We're so blessed to have her." Miguel was equally effusive in his gratitude to people who congratulated him on his mother's generosity. "She's always put family first," he told my friend Carmen from work. "This house is going to be perfect for raising Diego with his grandmother's love and guidance right here every day." I let them enjoy their moment of anticipation while I prepared for the announcement that would redefine everything they thought they knew about Eleanor Martinez. At 3 p.m., I called everyone together in the living room with its soaring ceilings and the picture window that looked out over the manicured front yard. Miguel and Sofia positioned themselves prominently beside me, Diego sleeping peacefully in Sofia's arms, ready to receive the keys and gratitude that they assumed were coming their way. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate this important moment with me," I began, looking around at the faces of people who had supported me through widowhood, single parenthood, and the recent months of grandmother expectations and disappointments. "Many of you have watched me make sacrifices for my family over the years, putting their needs before my own happiness and security." Heads nodded around the room. Everyone present had witnessed my decades of putting Miguel first, my recent months of funding his family's every need while being excluded from meaningful participation in my grandson's life. "This house represents a new chapter for me," I continued, noting how Miguel and Sofia beamed with excitement, clearly expecting the next words to be about shared living arrangements and multi-generational family plans. "For the first time in 15 years, I'm making a decision based entirely on what I want, what will make me happy, and what will give me the life I deserve in my golden years." Sofia shifted Diego to one arm and reached out to squeeze my hand, her smile radiant with gratitude for the gift she assumed was coming. "So today, I want to announce that this beautiful house, with its 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms and lovely yard where children could play safely, will be my sanctuary, my place to host family gatherings when I choose to do so, with people who value my presence as much as my presence." The shift in Miguel and Sofia's expressions was immediate and obvious. Miguel's smile faltered first, confusion replacing anticipation as he processed what I was actually saying. Sofia's hand tightened on mine, her gratitude transforming into something harder to read. "I've spent 9 months and $25,000 preparing for a grandchild I was banned from meeting at birth because I wasn't immediate family," I continued, my voice steady and clear. "I was told that only special people could be present for important family moments, that my presence would be overwhelming, that I needed to wait for permission to meet my own grandson." The room had gone completely silent, except for Diego's soft baby breathing and the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. "So I've decided to apply the same standards to my own home and my own life. This house is for immediate family only. For people who consider me special enough to include in the important moments, not just the expensive ones." Miguel's face had gone pale. "Mom, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that this house is mine. Just mine. I bought it for myself, with my own money, to create the life I want to live in my retirement years. A life where I'm valued for who I am, not what I can provide." Sofia's voice was barely above a whisper. "But we assumed." "You assumed that I would continue to be your financial solution while accepting whatever scraps of inclusion you decided to throw my way. You assumed that being allowed to spend money on your family was the same thing as being part of your family." The silence in the room was deafening. Some of my guests looked uncomfortable. Others nodded in recognition of truths they'd watched unfold over the past months. "Eleanor," Sofia said, her voice taking on the pleading tone I'd heard so many times when she needed something. "We can talk about this privately. You're upset, And I understand, but I'm not upset, I interrupted. I'm clear. For the first time in months, I'm completely clear about where I stand in your lives and where you stand in mine. Miguel tried a different approach. Mom, if this is about the hospital thing, we can explain. The hospital thing was just the final confirmation of something I'd been learning for 9 months. I'm useful to you, Miguel, but I'm not important to you. There's a difference. I looked around the room at my guests, neighbors who had watched me be taken advantage of, friends who had listened to me make excuses for exclusion, family members who had seen me pour money into relationships that gave nothing back. This house represents my decision to stop confusing generosity with love, to stop measuring my worth by how much I'm willing to give away to people who see me as a resource rather than a relationship. The party that was supposed to celebrate my gift to Miguel and Sofia had become my declaration of independence from them. The guests began to disperse slowly, some offering quiet congratulations on my beautiful new home, others hugging me with understanding that needed no words. Miguel and Sofia left without ceremony, Diego still sleeping in Sofia's arms, their assumption of financial windfall replaced by the reality that their ATM had just closed permanently. Now, as I sit here in my beautiful sunroom overlooking the garden, I planted myself, watching the morning light stream through windows that belong to me alone. I want to share something with every grandmother listening to this story. You cannot buy your way into someone's heart, and you should never have to purchase your place in their lives. For 9 months, I confused being needed with being loved, being useful with being valued. I told myself that funding Sofia's pregnancy was an investment in my relationship with my grandson, that paying for every expense was proof of my commitment to being a supportive grandmother. But what I was actually doing was subsidizing my own exclusion from the family I was creating with my checkbook. The morning I was banned from the hospital, while Sofia's best friend was welcomed into the delivery room, I finally understood that I wasn't their beloved family matriarch. I was their financial sponsor. And when sponsors are no longer needed, they're discarded without ceremony or gratitude. The house hunting that began as preparation for multi-generational family living became my escape route from a relationship built entirely on what I could provide rather than who I was. The revelation party that Miguel and Sofia expected to be their housing lottery became my graduation ceremony from the University of Hard-Learned Lessons about boundaries and self-respect. Living alone in this beautiful house has taught me something I wish I'd learned decades earlier. Solitude is not the same as loneliness, and being by yourself is infinitely better than being with people who only value your wallet. I wake up every morning in a home where every decision is mine, where every rule serves my comfort, where every expense benefits my own happiness. My relationship with Diego remains complicated. Miguel and Sofia still call occasionally, usually when they need money for his care, sometimes when they want to offer supervised visits that fit their schedule and their terms. I've learned to say no to the financial requests, and yes only to the visits that genuinely include me rather than just tolerating my presence. The hardest part isn't the loneliness, it's the guilt. Even now, 18 months later, I sometimes wonder if I was too harsh, if there was another way to handle the situation that could have preserved our relationship while still maintaining my dignity. But then I remember sitting in that hospital parking lot at 3 a.m., excluded from my own grandson's birth after funding every aspect of his creation, and I know I made the right choice. Through my work, volunteering with Elder Services of San Antonio, I've met dozens of grandparents facing similar manipulation. The stories vary. Some are excluded from weddings they paid for, others are pushed out of homes they helped purchase. Many are treated as walking ATMs by children who see their parents' love as a renewable financial resource. My message to every grandmother experiencing this kind of exploitation is simple. Your worth is not measured by your willingness to be used. Your love is not proven by your willingness to fund other people's dreams while being excluded from their realities. And your family obligations do not extend to bankrolling relationships with people who see you as a sponsor rather than a person. If this story of boundaries and self-respect touched your heart, like this video right now, Tell me in the comments about a time when you had to choose between being used and being valued, and subscribe to Grandma's Legacy, because every grandmother deserves to be loved for who she is, not what she can provide. My name is Eleanor Martinez. I'm 70 years old, and I'm living proof that it's never too late to stop buying love and start demanding the respect you've always deserved. You cannot purchase genuine affection, but you can always choose to invest in your own happiness instead of other people's expectations. Your worth is not your wallet, your value is not your vulnerability, and your love should never be measured by your willingness to accept less than you deserve from the people who claim to care about you. Stand up for yourself, even when the people you're standing up to are the ones you love most.